Welcome, everybody, to this college tennis roundtable discussion. We're going to look back at the 24-25 college tennis season and look ahead to the 25-26 season. My name's David Mullins. I'm the ITA CEO and president, and excited to get into a discussion with this group today. So, John Parsons, you want to introduce yourself and where everybody can find you on the internet?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Excited to be here. I'm John Parsons. You can find me on Twitter at JTweetsTennis or on Instagram at NoAdNoProblem, which is also the title of my podcast. And I will turn it over to Parsa.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Dave, for having us all on. Great group here. Excited to chat with everyone. My name is Parsa Namadi, and you can find me on X at ParsaBombs, as well as on Instagram, ParsaBombs, and then also on X, Parsa_Namadi. Cheers.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks to the ITA for putting this together. I'm really excited to talk about the college tennis season and past and the one in the future. You can find me at zootennis.com. I also write weekly for Tennis Recruiting Network, and I am also on Blue Sky at Zoo Tennis.
I appreciate you having us here today, Dave. I'm Alex Gruskin. I am the editor-in-chief for Cracked Rackets. Evidently, I'm also the diva of the group. People tuning in won't know this, but we are starting healthily late because when I'm without our producer, Daniel Westoff, I'm useless technology-wise. So I appreciate the patience of all of you on this call. And sincerely, I know everyone here just wants the best for college tennis. I feel very similarly. So very happy to discuss all things happening in the college tennis world.
Well, thank you, Alex. We wouldn't be this patient for many people, but for you, we will make the exception. So thanks for joining us. But yeah, I want to get straight into taking a look back at last season. Alex and John, you guys probably know the ins and outs of the players, the teams, the coaches, their schedules, the fall season, the spring season, as well as anybody, probably better than anybody at the top of Division One. So would love to get your take on kind of how the season went, any surprises that you saw, some of the highlights, anything you guys can think of. Alex, we'll start with you.
I think on the men's side, the place you have to start is just the headline. It's for the first time in almost a decade, you had a team win both the national indoors and outdoor titles, and certainly getting into the big picture discussion of the changes in the format to college tennis, how teams go about constructing their roster. No one made the most of the modern appliances available to you than Wake Forest, who bring in a Steph Bastonic from the transfer portal late in the winter, who bring in a top 10 junior in the country in Charlie Robertson in January. And to have those two additions to a team that had already made the semifinals the year before, it just speaks to it doesn't have to be the traditional pathway of roster construction anymore. You can do it the Wake Forest way, and ultimately you can go coast to coast as the favorite and ultimately national champion. Now, there were plenty of other good schools as well who had their moments. I think the the contradiction between how Wake constructed their roster and how your Division One women's champs, Georgia, constructed their roster, much more the traditional path. I think that's fascinating. I think it speaks to everything works for these coaches. It's just about finding what your lane is best. It's about finding what your program can do best, and that's not going to be the same for everyone. But I think in an era defined by so many different changes, that the pathway to a national championship looked so different for our Division One men's and women's champs. It just speaks to, there's no one way to do this successfully. And I don't know, I'll defer to you, John, but for me, big picture, that's one of my biggest takeaways coming out of this season.
Yeah, I think for as much as Wake Forest leapfrogged on the men's side, teams like Texas and TCU, which were your defending NCAA finalists, the season on the women's side, both the fall and the spring, really felt like a continuation of what we saw end there in the spring of 2024, and that was Georgia and Texas A&M at the top of the pack, led by two players in Mary Stoyana and Dasha Vidmanova, who have largely been at the top of the singles rankings over the last few years. And so you saw the emergence with Dasha Vidmanova winning the singles title in the fall, and then it really felt like this season was a question of who could usurp either of those two teams, and ultimately it was no one. Both of those teams facing off 8 times in the last 2 years. They face off in the women's indoor final, and then they face off again in the NCAA final, where ultimately it was Georgia Bulldogs winning their first NCAA title since 2000.
And Colette, maybe you can share a little bit about the junior players who came in, the freshmen this year. Who were the standouts to you? Were there any surprises, any players who you thought really pushed on and made an impact more than maybe you predicted? Or were there others that, yeah, this is exactly what you expected from them in their freshman year of college tennis?
Well, I think all of our 2020 vision is perfect, but in retrospect, but yeah, I have to say that what Rafa Hodar did was incredible at the University of Virginia. He was a little bit of the will he or won't he show up in January, and when he did, that instantly put Virginia in the picture for a national title. And I don't think playing number one for any top school as a freshman, a January admit freshman, is extremely difficult. And he didn't miss a beat. So I was extremely impressed with what he brought to the table. On the women's side, I think Valerie Glasman of Stanford was a real revelation. She was great from the minute she got to Stanford. She had a great junior career, and that translated perfectly into college tennis, right? You know, at the top of the lineup at Stanford as well. So those are two, but of course we had, you know, all sorts of lots of Januaries. Alex mentioned Charlie Robertson, and we had Cadence Brace and Kayla Cross come in for LSU and put them, you know, right there after years of decades program history not being able to contend and instantly being able to with them. Yeah, I thought I was maybe a little bit disappointed in the first half of the season from the UCLA freshmen with Rudy Kwan and Kaylin Bagoon. Kaylin also a junior Grand Slam champion at the French last year. I think it took, Rudy was there from the fall, but Kaylin didn't get there until January, and I think it took him a little bit of time to actually feel comfortable and really get his teeth into the college season. But they definitely, as you saw with what UCLA did, making the quarterfinals, they were great additions, and it was really good to see that the disappointment of the start of the season did not extend to the end of the season for them.
And if I may add to that, Dave, in my quest to ensure that Parsa never speaks on this podcast, because the mystery has to remain. I don't want people to be comfortable with what his voice sounds like. If you look at all the semifinalists at the Division One championships, this year, in a way, maybe they hadn't in the past 2 years, you saw freshmen contributing in significant ways on every team, whether it's Georgia, it's a little thing, but Hayden Mulberry was a pivotal piece for them to overcome an injury to Minor Rundor and overcome an injury to Alex Vecic and get, excuse me, really good at the doubles point. Similarly, Texas A&M didn't have to replace a lot, but they needed Lexington Reed at that number 6 spot so that they wouldn't miss a beat, so that they could beat Georgia in the regular season. You look for Michigan, they had 2 new freshman starters in Emily Sarts-Lundy, of course, and Jessica Bernales. That team into the semifinals. And then, of course, for North Carolina, Alanis Hamilton, Claire Hill, like significant contributors on the women's side. I could go through all the examples for the men as well. Cooper Westendike, Roger Pascoul, obviously all the Virginia guys, Charlie Robertson, Jonas Silas was technically a newcomer for Wake Forest here this season. I think what was so interesting about the newcomers, to Colette's point, is, you know, in years past, in particular this last half decade with the COVID eligibility, if you were going to be a freshman who played, you had to be really good right away. That burden wasn't as much this season because there were just more roster spots available. There were just more lineup spots available. And so I did think this season you got back to seeing that, you know, while there was a Glasman, there was a Hodar, it got back to, okay, freshmen, you're going to be asked to step up at 5 and 6. It may seem insignificant, but as we all know, that could be the most pivotal thing for a team making a national championship run. And so while I agree it wasn't as top heavy results wise, there were a lot of freshmen who proved pivotal to their team's success this season.
Yeah, every position counts for the same amount of points, right? So, Parsa, you do a great job of covering the world of transfers and the transfer portal. We can get into that a bit later, but that's become a huge part of the cadence of or the calendar of how college coaches now recruit. And so, if you look back a year ago, some of those transfer announcements that you were putting out there, again, any surprises? Did you think, okay, this player is going to go here and make a huge difference and challenge for a national championship? Or were there some that maybe didn't work out as well as maybe you expected?
We've already discussed them at length, but obviously the Dostanic one was just massive, and that was one where Boyton the previous year had transferred to Wake, never got eligible, and when I announced Steph, a lot of people were skeptical. Is he going to get eligible? What's his impact going to be? His last year at USC, he redshirted. He was injured, so was able to get that year back, played on tour a little, and then I don't think most people were aware he was coming back to college, and that was quite a shocker. And it's like, okay, let's see how he fits now. Um, and just culture-wise, fitting great, and it was obviously still a brutal blow for the Trojans. Goes in there, becomes number one in the country, takes him to national championship, has an unbelievable end to his college career. And that was a late one. These Wake had Charlie Robertson. We bombed him when he was Brian Baker picked him up. That was like January, like right around kickoff weekend, and then they get to Stonich right around. I think it was like probably Christmas, New Year's. They had a couple late additions from Coach Bresky, and luckily this time he got eligible. So unlike Boyton, they were able to get him in. Women's side, you had NCAA singles champ Noel to Miami, Sherbaninina to Oklahoma, and then, I mean, I still got to give shout out to Suresh, even though he didn't transfer this past year. But when Wake got him from Georgia Gwinnett, that was a very underrated pickup. Just been a rock for them, which I always loved when players from D2, D3, JUCO, NAIA are able to transfer to D1 and able to showcase their skills, because the level at the top there is really great too. We see like Case Western and Denison at the D3 level at NCAA championships. Like a lot of these, we saw James Hopper from Case Western go to Virginia. Like a lot of these players are able to make that jump. They're just sometimes for academic reasons, financial, whatever it may be, they go to other levels, and it's always cool when those lower levels they get highlighted and people are like, oh, like maybe we shouldn't necessarily discount them. And on the transfer portal, when you look on when you log in, it doesn't show ITA ranking, UTR, their record, stats. So like sometimes there are players that go a little under the radar, and there's some coaches that do go the little extra further research, and they're like, oh, because all it shows is your institution and your conference. And I know definitely there's some coaches that will just skip over some of these D2, D3 guys, and I'll bomb like a D2 or D3 kid to D1. They're like, wait, that guy was a 12.6 UTR? Like, oh, wow, he was #1 ITA ranking? Like, what? I didn't even know about him. He won the ITA Cup? Oh, yeah, I remember him at ITA Fall Nats now. And it's kind of cool just some coaches, they get rewarded for going a little more under the radar. So the portal's been crazy chaos. We'll get into it later. It's obviously been good for bombs business. There's been a lot of bombs last couple of years, so not going to complain about that. We'll get into it a little later, but would like the coaching carousel to pick up a little more.
Okay, well, Colette, I mean, looking forward then, guys, Colette, maybe we'll start with you. I mean, you've been following some of these top juniors and their trajectory, and maybe some of them were faced with that decision. Do I go pro? Do I go to college? If I go to college, where do I go? And so who are those players that we should be looking out for heading into the 25-26 season?
Yeah, I don't think we're probably going to get two boys junior slam champions this year because that was crazy. And again, all of these are speculative because you never quite know, as Parsa well knows, that somebody commits or verbally puts something out there on Instagram and then they turn out having, a great fall, or they get to a semifinal of a challenger, and all of a sudden college doesn't seem, maybe they get some attention from some agents or from their home federation that they weren't getting before, and they don't come. So I always have to put that caveat out there. But I think again, mostly we have the top Americans still always considering college, and with Jagger Leach going to Stanford now, that being a late change for him, he's obviously going to have a big impact. Noah Johnston, who is in the Roland Garros boys doubles final, is going to Georgia this fall. He should, do great things for them. Jack Satterfield has had a great years as going to Vanderbilt. He will be, huge. And they also have a really good Korean coming as well, so to Vanderbilt. So they had the top rated recruiting class this year. So they're going to be a factor in the SEC as well. We have Hayden Jones, who is a really good player from Australia. His sister's #1 in the world in the ITF juniors, going to Illinois. But on the women's side, girls' side, Monica Ekstrand, who is a Stanford recruit, has won 2 35s since April, and she's just killing it. She had a very I wouldn't say disappointing junior career, but a lot of people who saw her play were wondering why she didn't win more. And I don't think she's ever been top 50 in the ITF juniors, but she has a game, that's really good. And so she's going to instantly be one of the top players in college tennis. Mayu Crossley, who was a top 5 junior, just an amazing player from Japan. She trains at Everett's and has been in this country for a long time, going to UCLA. That's going to be huge. And Tori Osigwe, whose sister Whitney was #1 junior in the world and did not go to college. Tori hasn't had that kind of success on the ITF circuit, junior circuit, but she's had a great, every time she plays a big ITF women's event, she does very well. She's going to NC State, and she will be huge for them. So those are just a few of the many players. I wanted to mention one, Oklahoma State's Luca Udvardy, who made the final of Junior Wimbledon the year that Duke's Liv Hovde won it. She's going to Oklahoma State. She's 19 now, and when I talked to her at Wimbledon, she really had no interest in college tennis. But I think after a couple of years of knocking around, being 700 in the world, it looks kind of appealing to go to college tennis. And from Hungary, not a lot of resources there for her, so college tennis is going to be great for her development.
Very good. Okay, I look forward to seeing these young folks play here this fall or next spring. But Parsa, I mean, we're building up to what the season might look like, but just trying to figure out where these players are going. So again, in the transfer market, I guess, in the last few weeks, has there been any significant transfers that you think will make a huge impact on a team next year?
Going off Colette's point about Oklahoma State, they also signed transfer Olivia Linser from UCF. She played #1 there, and fantastic addition. Violetta Martinez, Illinois to A&M. She just signed. Auburn picked up a couple great transfers. Ashton Bowman from Texas heading over, and then they got FIU #1 girl, Kairu Denova. Cal sweep the transfer portal. They got 2 guys from Oregon, Paris Putacha and German guy Luen Lumkemen, as well as Thiago Silva, Pacific #1 since their coach left for Tennessee, as well as A&M and Oklahoma had a little trade. So Kolo Mansi's going from Oklahoma to A&M, and then Alan Magadan waiting on his waiver. But if he gets eligible, he would be playing for Oklahoma. And then Wake, always busy, picked up MTSU #1, big freshman. Had a fantastic season, Kasper Zimkowiak. And then TCU just picked up Cosme from Old Dominion. So the teams are, portal just closed, but there's still a decent amount of big additions left. Okonkwo, his older brother played for Illinois, and he's Tulsa, Alex Okonkwo, big fella. He's won Ohio State, kind of fits in with Ty Tucker, the scheme to get those big boys. Will Jansen transferred again, so he's gone from decommit from Yale, go to UNC, go to Ohio State, now he's at Georgia. Third time, hopefully, the charm for him. Georgia's also in the portal, and Vivian Yang just signed from Pepperdine to Virginia, so Still some bombs to come, but maybe it'll slow down a little bit since the portal just closed a few days ago. But there's still some fish out there.
No, it was an excellent answer. I know every college coach out there, if you wanted to create a paid service of hypothetical rosters, they would all subscribe tomorrow because all of us until honestly national indoors, I feel like I am in the wind as to what a roster looks like. And am I certain that these are the 7, 8, 9 kids we're going to see competing? And I know last off season in particular, John Parsons and I, when we were trying to make our preseason rankings, like we almost got lucky that we didn't do that exercise this season because second, third, fourth week of December, we heard these additional announcements. And yeah, you brought up a fascinating point of, well, a player can commit, but does that mean they're actually coming? Could there be something between that commitment and the start of play, whether it be a pro success or, to your point, a federation commitment that dissuades them from attending college and trying to create some sort of media ecosystem to react to all of these commitments, react to all of this news? Jay, I think it gets really difficult because I think for most of the offseason, you and I are kind of floating in roster purgatory of what the rosters are actually going to look like.
Yeah, it's super difficult. I mean, we talked about the new additions earlier. Put some stats on it. You know, there were 5 women's teams in the final site that had January additions, and there were 6 men's teams that had January additions that were contributing to their top 6. And so many of those were players that you found out about in December or even January or February, right? And so it makes it really tough to predict who is going to be these late breaking teams when the players aren't on the roster in September, October, November. It's why kickoff weekend and the draft is so challenging for many of these coaches. It becomes more and more challenging, and all of a sudden you go and play, and there were 3 players now on that team that were not announced up until January. So it's really tough, and I think a lot of coaches as well are sort of trying to have their finger on the pulse in the rumor mill of who might be going. But it's very challenging. It makes our job much harder to predict and do sort of preseason top 10s, and even basing the results on what you see in the fall is challenging because that might not be very representative of what you see in the spring. And certainly on the men's side, that was the case this season, right? You see notable names that didn't compete in the fall, like Hadar, who we talked about for Virginia, Jack Pennington-Jones taking the fall off, defending NCAA champion Philip Planencheck from Alabama not playing. So it does change the narrative of the spring season when you have either players taking the fall off or players only arriving in January or February.
And Alex and John, just given all that, and it's impossible to state, but you're also following kind of the trajectory of these teams, and there's some coaching moves as Parsa, referenced as well. But as you take in all the information of the freshmen, the transfer, maybe the coach's trajectory in recent years, where who are the teams that you think we should be looking at or paying close attention to that could go on a title run next May? Any teams, both men's and women's side, that stand out to you guys?
I defer to you, Jay. I get in trouble when I make predictions.
Well, I think on the women's side, there are a few teams that do stick out, and I feel like now when you previously would look at like the kickoff draft, you'd look at the players that were returning. Now I do think it's a good question to think about just the coach at the helm, right? Like, is this coach going to be someone that you think is going to field a very strong team? A program like Auburn. So Jordan Zabo in his first season there, coming over from Texas A&M, he hit the ground running. He only had 3 players when he came on board, and he had to bring in a whole new class. And Parsa's referenced some of the moves they've made, both in the transfer portal as well as some new additions that they have announced. And so that's a team that you look for to say, hey, they are building something special there in Auburn. That is one women's team I would keep an eye on. Oklahoma State as well sort of had a golden roster at the beginning of January. Things sort of fell apart a little bit for them. They picked it back up towards the end of the season. With the new additions that Parsa has mentioned, like, they are going to be a contender once again in 2026. And so those are some maybe non-blue blood type programs on the women's side that you might expect to see making a deep run. I'd also say North Carolina is continued to going to be there. One transfer we didn't discuss was Obi Kajuru, a former top 5 player going from Oklahoma State to North Carolina. That was probably the transfer for me that was the most jaw-dropping, so that will keep them in the hunt. And hopefully we'll see Reese Brantmeyer healthy for a full season because we have been missing that for a while. On the men's side, your TCU as a men's program is the only team that's made the past 10 quarterfinals in a row. So you feel like regardless of the roster turnover that they're going to have, they lose their top 3, they get the decommitment from Jagger Leach, like you feel like they're still going to find a way to return a top caliber team. Texas is going to be in the hunt. They will likely lose very little pieces from this roster pending Timo Legout eligibility questions, but that is a team that returns a ton. So I think we're going to see a lot of similar names deep in the NCAA tournament next year.
I think that's a really good assessment. One other program I would throw in on the men's side, just a newer blood. How about the UCF men? What Lloyd Bruce Burgess has done in just his first few years on the job. And anyone who has met Lloyd, the intensity, the passion he brings for college tennis, if every coach in the country matched that, like I wouldn't need to have a job. Me, Colette, Jay, we could just sit off and watch the tennis because, again, that sort of enthusiasm, that sort of desire to treat this as though it is college football, treat this with the seriousness of college basketball, the biggest revenue generating collegiate sports. That's all we can ask for as fans of the game, as media covering the game, is that the coaches and the actors involved in crafting this product take it with the seriousness that we hope they do. And I just think you look at the transfer portal, you look at who he's already brought in as a recruit. Obviously, with the national championships, the outdoor championships in the spring, moving to Orlando for much of the next decade, for him to have that opportunity, and I would credit Coach Kanyeko on the women's side as well, I would keep an eye on the UCF men and women. They have something cooking down in Orlando, and I think they've done an exceptional job of recruiting, and I think that's going to continue. The other name I would throw out there, and it was such a fast start, and to some extent it was a bit of a flame out, but you can't do what Harry Jaden did in years 1 and 2 at Michigan State and not keep our attention. Like, keep in mind, relative to expectations, I think we all thought Michigan State men could have been a top 10 team this season. Michigan State is never top 50, let alone in a top 10 discussion. For Harry to have that program to where they finish in the top 25 and it's considered a disappointment, like, as a man from Michigan, I can tell you, for a long time, Michigan State men's tennis do. And so I just like that steady rise for the Spartans. I'm just saying, like, don't sleep on the job Harry has done. And in general, those coaches who played this sport, who have a passion for this sport, and it gravitated them back into the coaching ranks. You can name a name like that at almost every top contending school now in the country. And I think it's a big reason why the product has gotten better. I think it's a big reason why so many of these top recruits are willing to come play college tennis now. I think it is the thing that gives me the most optimism as I try to forecast the future of college tennis. The coaching has never been better, and it's because of the passion all of these coaches bring every day.
Great stuff. So lots to look forward to, it sounds like. So, well, I want to get into more of the philosophical side of the discussion now. So, I started my college or tennis career in 1998. So, Alex, John, Parsa, you guys may not have even been born yet.
Potty trained, just finishing up potty training.
So, Colette and myself have seen an evolution of college tennis over the last several decades and lots of changes, whether it's format changes or to the seasons or, how you qualify for national indoor championships. I mean, there's a million things I could go through. I mean, our rule book gets updated every year. But with everything going on in college athletics, I know you guys are paying attention to the landscape as a whole. Where do you see the opportunities going forward? What do we as a college tennis community need to do more of to ensure that we're meeting this moment of disruption within college athletics? I know it's a tough question, it's a big one, but Colette, I'm going to let you start.
Well, I would say one of the things that would be really helpful going forward was to get more international federations on board with what college tennis can do for their players. I think we all know that Great Britain has taken advantage of that. It's been one of the places, and that has embraced that. And I think that other federations should probably be reached out to a little bit more. Now, I don't know if that's the ITA's job, if it's something the USTA should do, if however it is, but I do think that even with all the examples that we have, there are still too many federations that are too willing to throw their kids into the deep end of pro tennis without realizing what they're giving up by not coming to college. So that's something that I'd really like to see more focus on. And I know that, I guess right now politically it's not really all that positive to be saying things about international students, but I do think that anyone who has been on a team, and I've covered teams with international players for 20 years, they're the best of friends. They learn about each other's cultures. They visit each other in the summer. Some of them stay here and become college coaches. And that's something that we're all missing if we're categorically rejecting international players, whether it's from their own federations or whether it's from the people here that don't think that they add value. But I've never seen a player on a team with a international player that hasn't gotten along with them and hasn't learned from them, and vice versa. I just think that's one of the great things about college tennis, and Dave, you probably know that as well as anyone. So yeah. I don't want to see that taken for granted going forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Colette, and yeah, as a former international student athlete myself, I couldn't agree more. And as a former college, yeah, the battles I would have with these federations, federation coaches, and trying to get them to understand the benefits of their players going to college tennis, it was banging your head against the wall sometimes. But it has improved, but there's still lots of work to be done. But Parsa, same question to you again. Meaty topic here.
I really enjoyed the electronic line calling when I was with you at National Indoors. That was a cool new feature, and just getting it more and more advanced. And we see now even on clay on tour, they're even going to, who would have thought 20 years ago there'd be electronic line calling on clay. No offense to the line judges out there that are listening to this, not trying to put you guys out of jobs, but just trying to decrease the drama we have sometimes between student athletes and coaches, and just getting the sport just more accurate line calls. We don't want to see drama or big calls deciding matches that are incorrect. And going off Colette's point, I couldn't agree more about the international kids. You see there's kids from Morocco, Australia, Russia, England, like all around the world. Like it could be a team, especially some of these teams that's like no Americans. And you see their best friends. It's your best friends for 4 years. You're dining together, you're playing tennis together, and it's such a good experience to come to college, because where else are you able to get like 10 high-level players to train with on a daily basis who have the same goals as you, that are going to school with you, but then they're also having fun with you, but then they also want to have pro aspirations. They travel with you on the road. You have a coaching staff that takes care of you. You're on scholarship. A lot of players don't have to pay any costs. You get top-notch strength and conditioning. You're in the weight rooms. You're like, especially at some of these SEC schools and Big Ten, all the money that's being thrown at these programs, and now you have NIL. It's just such a fantastic experience, and you should at least come for a year or two. There's very, very, very few junior players that should not come at all. Like at the very least, come a semester, and it's going to benefit you. Like we look at Diana Schneider with NC State. Like she was literally top 100 while she's in college. And even other coaches who are like rivals of NC State were like, this is still good for college tennis, because now if a recruit tells me they're ranked 200-300 and like, oh no, I'm too good for college tennis, and you're like, no, you're not. Diana was literally top 100, going to play the Charleston Open, beats top 100 players, and then comes back and plays a dual match.
You were speaking to different coaches than I was then, so.
There are even some rivals who are like off the record, like on the record, I have to act very upset, but they're like low key when I'm in DMs, and it's like I'm actually happy because it's helping me in recruiting, and it just overall just raises the level up. Like Luca Dvardy, Colette mentioned Oklahoma State. this is overall good for college tennis because you want these players around the world and other federations like, oh wow, like so and so went to college. Maybe we should simmer down a bit and not be so upset. Like for the longest time, it's like, oh, you're going to college tennis, you're taking the easy way out. You don't care about your tennis. You're just trying to go have fun in America. It's like, no, I'm trying to develop. I'm trying to be the next Jake Fernley. I'm trying to be the next Cam Norrie. Colton Smith has already just finished up, and he's playing all these challengers. He made quarterfinals at Houston while he was in college. So yeah, wholeheartedly agree on that point. We like college tennis here. Vamos.
All right. John Parsons, I know we've had some really good discussions about this over the last few months, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think a lot about, and I think about what is the opportunity for college tennis, particularly relative to the other sports it's competing against, which is other college sports on campus. And the harsh reality right now is that for the majority of these tennis matches, they are going to have fewer butts in seats than other sports on campus. And where I think college tennis has a huge opportunity is deepening community engagement. You look at the stats right now for recreational tennis players, they continue to increase every year. Over 25 million people play tennis at least once a year in the US today. That number is 13 million if you say how many times they play 10 or more. So there are a lot of people playing tennis, way more than are playing these other sports that they are tuning in to watch. And so I think right now we need to find ways to deepen that community engagement because there are college tennis matches happening probably on the same courts that those people are playing recreational matches on. And converting those people to be regular attendees of matches, I think is and should be a huge focus for us as a broader college tennis community. And taking that one step further, you look to, Gruskin mentioned this, the USTA hosting the NCAAs for 10 years after 2027. To me, I look at that and say, how are we going to deepen community engagement within the Orlando area so that that event is jam-packed butts and seats, that community embraces that event the same way in Omaha embraces the College World Series. Oklahoma City is embracing the Women's College World Series, which is happening right now. That, I think, is going to prove to be a lifeline for so many of these college campuses and college programs, as well as some of the premier championships that we have. Parsa mentioned the success of indoors this year. Going to men's indoors this year, I felt like that deepened community engagement was really present. You had people from the community, like a John Isner, like a Dirk, showing up to that event, and that's a huge credit to what Grant Chen and SMU has built in deepening that community engagement. And so that is a model of success that needs to be true for every individual college campus to get more butts and seats, to provide more avenues to potential donors and contributors to that program, as well as for our large championships.
Very good. Thank you, John. And Alex?
Well, I'm sad you didn't ask me first because in political fashion, I was going to yield my time to the congressman from No Ad, No Problem. I just think John nailed so many of those things there. And I do think it is as granular as Jay was getting into. Like, and said with love to programs who I know don't have choices. There are conferences because of how many teams you have in the conference. You have to play on Thursdays. You have to play at these inopportune times. And I'm going to try my best not to swear, I promise, Dave. But just like, stop that BS. Stop that right now. If you want this sport to succeed, we can't be playing at Thursday at 2 p.m. Or if you're playing at Thursday at 2 p.m., you are telling your team, I don't want anyone in the stands. I just want to play this match and move on to the next one. And that's just unacceptable for a sport that is a product that is this exceptional now. And whether it's setting standard times, hey, the men at the SEC are going to play Friday at 5 p.m. The women are going to play Friday at 7 p.m. And we'll switch that every year or whatever it may be. Just some sort of consistency so that you are optimizing putting butts in seats, getting fans there. Obviously, I am biased as someone who played club tennis at a Division I school and forever grateful to Adam Steinberg and Sean Mamie, the men's coaching staff at the time, who said, hey, why do we keep seeing all of you and this team at all of our matches? Who are you guys? And we say, oh, we're the club tennis team. And it's a credit to Steiny, who realized he had 30 to 50 ready-made fans for every match that Michigan was going to host if all he did was embrace us one time. And he did that, and we used those tennis matches as our pre-games before we went out, before we did whatever we wanted to do on the weekend. And to Jay's point, so many small community engagement things that every coach can do. Like every school is surrounded by some sort of tennis club. Hey, the local communities club might actually be your facility. It's a lot to ask, but if you care about building up the fans, you send a player there once a week. Or maybe it's even once a month. Or you send an assistant coach there once a week, once a month. And you just show to all of those people playing, hey, we are going to invest in your tennis. And what we are asking in return is, can you invest in our student athletes? Can you make this a special experience worth their while? Now, to Colette's point, like nothing makes me more angry than the demonization of international students. Because if we're going to be this quote unquote capitalistic society and the best should rise to the top, then it shouldn't matter that a kid from Hungary has a scholarship spot. I'm sorry, American kid, be better than him. And you'll get that spot moving forward. Like, to be the best, you have to compete with the best. And that's what makes this international aspect of college tennis so special, is it's just, okay, we are now bringing in the best. And with the accelerator programs, which I cannot credit you enough for, Dave, and the entire ITA team, because so many players I talk to, whether they're recently removed from college or even a little bit further back, the players 5-10 years removed, are so envious of that opportunity because they know how worthwhile it is, and that these athletes receiving these chances are on the level. They just didn't have the opportunities that these programs now provide. So I think the level is there. I think the product is there, and now it's on the salespeople of the sport. Myself, Jay, Colette, Parsa, all of these coaches, all of these players, to engage with the community and say, okay, so if we play at 7 p.m., you're all going to be here. If we do a clinic 4:30 to 6:30 for you and your kids, you'll stick around. Okay, then we're going to play at 7 p.m.s. Or, many schools have done free pizza or free donut Saturdays, whatever it may be. There are little things that we can do. And I just think it needs to be synergy across all of these schools. This will be my last point because you picked the right topic for me to wind up on the rant here. All these coaches are incredibly stubborn. And I would say this to all of their faces. I've been trying to do so more of late as I've gained their trust of just, look, I know you want your competitive advantages, but you are screwing the sport when you don't share, hey, here's what I'm doing to have success, or hey, here's what I would like to try. Have you tried this, my rival school? Like, if we're not having those conversations amongst the investors within this sport, amongst the people who it matters most to, coaches and just principal actors, whatever, we are screwing ourselves. And so I do think, like, let's communicate. Hey, this worked for us at TCU. You should try it at Texas. Or, hey, this is what we do well at Ohio State. Michigan, suck it up. This is what you got to try. I just wish coaches were less stubborn about maintaining a competitive advantage so that the synergy across the sport could be better. And I know that's something you are really trying to hammer home, Dave. It's why I'm so commending of your efforts. But just sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot by overlooking the little details or getting stubborn. And I think the biggest thing we could do as a sport is to stop doing that and realize it is a collective good. That's what we're trying to establish. And hopefully that will continue to be established over the next few years.
Yeah, well said, Alex. And I think that's maybe athletic directors, associate athletic directors really paying attention to what to hold coaches accountable to. And does it really matter if you finish third or fifth in your conference? Maybe, you didn't win. So does it really matter? Maybe it does. But how do they start holding them accountable to some different KPIs? And I did a great podcast with Riley Grossbaum, who's the head men's tennis coach at Idaho, who does every Wednesday afternoon. They do a clinic. Everybody's welcome. It's free. They give the equipment. And, he's got 50, 100 people out there. They just figure it out. Everybody has a great time. And those are the people then that start showing up on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and giving money to the program and inviting the players over for Thanksgiving dinner or whatever it is and making them feel like they're at home. So there are coaches out there doing it. There's coaches willing to share, especially on the podcast that we do, especially coaches convention, things like that. But we need more and more folks just taking action. And if they're not able to do it, how do they get volunteers to maybe sign up and do it, help with that if that's not their strong point or they want to put their focus elsewhere. But thank you guys. That's great. The next thing I want to ask you is that In about 10 days, our whole staff is flying to Chicago. We're a fully remote organization right now. We are going to be sitting down for a couple of days of meetings, and I would love your input as to what I should tell them. What did the ITA get right this year, and what did we get wrong? And I'll take none of the blame. I'm going to blame the staff and tell them. So Alex, starting with you, one thing we did right, one thing we did wrong.
Uh, you could have fired Cody. No, that's a joke. I know he's listening, and I've known Cody. He's my age. We've known each other forever, so I want to be clear. That is very much a joke. Love Cody very, very dearly. What did you guys get right? I really, as Parsa mentioned earlier, the pilot program of the trying electronic calling at the National Indoors, just every coach I spoke to raved about that opportunity and raved about the idea that, okay, this is something, this is going to help. Like, even if we don't agree with every call, we don't have to litigate these things. We can say, hey, that's the computer. You're not going to win an argument with the computer. Let's move on. And that you guys were willing to run out a pilot program like that at your championships, try it in the fall events as well to build up just wherewithal and recognition of what this could be. I thought that was exceptionally well done. Again, I thought both indoors worked really, really well. The idea of moving the final to Tuesday night, I think, worked perfectly. We got really lucky that we had TCU certainly in that final in Texas, but boy, was that, I can't remember a better national indoor crowd than that crowd for a championship match. So that's a credit to you guys. On the other side of the coin, it won't all be rosy, I promise. I think I think the communication of why we are moving to the fall, these individual events. I think there are still so many misnomers, and this gets back to, again, a lack of willingness to communicate candidly amongst coaches because they don't want to see their competitive advantages compromised. I think a lot of these coaches aren't keenly aware of, if you, and this might be me editorializing, so I apologize, something you guys can knock around amongst the ITA staff. If the NCAA individual championships aren't in the fall, I don't know if there will be an appetite for fall tennis for a lot of these ADs moving forward, and just communicating, hey, the only reason we can have an All-American, the only reason we can have a fall Nats, the only reason we can play regionals, and we are the one sport where you can get legitimate competition all year round. The only way I think we can do that moving forward is by keeping those individual championships in the fall. Now, if coaches don't want to do that moving forward, that's their decision. But I don't think I don't think every coach understands the pressure that just the entire fall would be under without the presence of those championships. So I just still think there are misunderstandings about what the fall should be, why those individual championships are there. I know coaches I have talked to, some thoroughly understand it, some really don't. I think that the clearer communication about, hey, this is our aspiration for the fall, I think fans would appreciate some clarity. I know coaches would as well. So that would be the one big thing, is still trying to, it is year 2 of the pilot program coming up. Why are we doing this? I can only imagine how many thousands of emails you have sent, Dave, but maybe it's time for the round of the next 1,000.
Thank you, Alex. No, it's great feedback. Appreciate it. John, over to you.
Well, I certainly echo the stuff that Gruskin shared. I think one thing that to me has gone really well this season, in addition to what Gruskin shared, has been a lot of the social media communications and the posts that you all are doing there. I think this has long been an area where I've wanted to see more of an improvement. And even just you look at this past week, the rollout of the ATP Accelerator program, the players that qualified, the graphics are excellent. People are sharing them, schools are sharing them, and that's a great way to drive more visibility for college tennis. Additionally, being on site at these events and creating more videos and content. I think largely when I talk about that community engagement piece, one of the biggest things we need to overcome is this misperception of college tennis being like a quiet Wimbledon event, right? And being boring relative to other college sports. And we all know that that's not the case. And so the best way to tell people that is to show them that. And so more social media coverage there to showcase the excitement of a college tennis dual match will go a long ways in having that club tennis team show up because they feel like they can actually go to a tennis match and then go out on the town rather than, oh, that feels boring and maybe like a mood ruiner. So I think that that's been really commendable, and certainly continuing to track the players from college that go on into the pros and elevating their success. Like all of that, I think has been pretty well done. On the flip side, I certainly agree with Gruskin. I think the one suggestion might be sort of like a wrap up on the first fall season and like what did we learn. I think there were a lot of hypotheses that were shared directly to coaches. I certainly read the comms. I don't know if all coaches did, but sort of level setting on like, hey, these were our hypotheses, right? One of them being that we can build deeper inroads into an athletic department by having the NCAA championships there. Well, what's the perception, right? How did that go in year one? Like, did ADs care? Did that seem to resonate? How will we be shifting that approach going into year two? I think more of those comms. And I think one thing that's pretty tactical, but kind of another comms area where I heard a lot of feedback on the ground was about the switch to the Dunlop balls. I think that come up throughout the season, and then certainly the NCAA is playing with Wilson. I know there were comms, many comms about this, and so there's certainly a continued thorn in the side, I think, for the ITA to try and reach these coaches and communicate the reason being. I think, Dave, you've done a good job of being proactive in that space, but that was one thing that came up. And then lastly, Dave, when you and I discussed, I know that you always look back at the rankings, and if I look back at the women's rankings this year, the Virginia women reaching that number one ranking after UGA won indoors felt like a little bit of a blip in the rankings, and so that's one area I know you all continue to evaluate. So that would be my feedback.
Yeah, thank you, John. And just, so everybody knows, there will be actually some adjustments to how the initial ranking is done at the beginning of the year. So we actually worked with a mathematician from VCU over the last year. We did all the shadow rankings, and we think those type of issues will be resolved going forward, but you never know. But we have spent a lot of time, money, and energy on trying to refine it. But we hadn't looked at the algorithm in 10 years, so I think we probably should be doing that every 3 or 4 years probably. So we'll see what this next year brings, and please, I'd love your guys' feedback when the rankings roll out next year and see what you guys think. But Parsa, anything different from what John and Alex have shared?
Echoing the rankings part, glad that's getting addressed. Vamos. Did love, that was my first national indoors experience. That was very cool. I think that was also maybe a special one. Like, credit again, like Gruskin said, to Grand Chen. That was a fantastic event, and it's a beautiful facility. Great crowds of not only just Wake and TCU fans, but some neutral fans as well. And felt like a proper national championship, which is really cool. Would like to see, it's a little more political, but I don't like to see people fighting. Like, I like everyone kind of on the same side. Like, there's ITF, USTA, there's the tours, you got UTR, you got ITA. Everyone, I mean, it is a business at the end of the day for everyone, and everyone's trying to make money, and they have their own goals. But if people were more aligned overall, I think would sport would be happier, similar to Gruskin's point about coaches being like rivals and helping each other out. At the end of the day, I hope everyone would have the same goal of just wanting to grow the sport, make it accessible to everyone. And I think overall everyone kind of has the same mission and goals. We go about it in different ways. And but it's the way it is, politics. Not everyone can get along, but that would be kind of nice. And everyone utilizes their resources, because everyone has a lot of resources. And if you could put them together, I think it would help grow the sport even more and be a better place for everyone. But maybe that's all I'm thinking too. Everything can't be all roses and nice. And
No, I think that's the goal, Parsa. That's what's hurt tennis for many decades, is we have too many silos and folks trying to protect their little part of the world. And maybe we thought as a tennis community, because of such the boom that we had in the 70s and 80s, that it was just going to stay going in that direction. And, I think we were maybe slow to adapt as a sport to what was needed to be done to ensure that, the next generation were going to be as enamored with the game as my generation. I just remembered I'm older than you guys. But Colette.
But just wait till you start dropping Mullins bombs, and then Parsa's never going to respond to your texts.
That's not happening. Don't worry, Alex. All right, Colette, any other thoughts from you? What did we get right? What did we get wrong?
Yeah, I do have a few thoughts. I want to echo Alex, everybody's electronic line calling thing. As you know, I wrote that story for a Tennis Recruiting Network. I learned so much. And now I go around thinking I know more about electronic line calling than just about anyone. So it's probably not true, but I really, really enjoyed writing that, and I missed it at the NCAA's. I can't say anything other than that. I wish, I hope that the ITF is getting ready to certify, is doing something, because it's got to come. It was just so popular with everyone. The big
Can
plus.
I interject on that, Colette? And I just want to say it was one of the highlights of my season, seeing Colette on the ground on a mission to report out on electronic line calling, and it was so much fun to hear the little morsels that she was gathering around the grounds. Like, she did a fantastic job with that article, and it was much needed to bring a lot of insight into that process. And so, thank you for that memory, Colette. It was very fun.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate that. I know you guys aren't, as Alex mentioned and everyone mentioned about having the team indoor final at 5 p.m. was great, was outstanding. I know you guys are not the NCAA schedulers, but I have a plus and a minus on both of those. The individual scheduling was horrible in the fall, and it cannot continue. I mean, I don't see how you can play all quarterfinals at the same time at like noon and have nobody there. I mean, that was just not very good. And then in contrast, on a much better side, it was fantastic this year to have the team championships back to back to back to back, and that was like, I'm hoping something that was learned from last fall maybe, or May to now. So if so, I'm all on board with that for eternity if the ITA has anything to say about that. And I know this is one of John's regular pleas, but can you change the draft dates for the kickoff to something a little bit closer to the fall, when we actually have a small clue as to what might be happening in the next season?
Yeah, no, it's and John did bring that up with me, and actually discussed it at one of our Division One operating committee. So we have operating committees for each division. On Division One, I think we have 24 coaches. So we brought that topic up, John. You'll be proud of me. There was a agenda item, and as we discussed through it further, it was like, okay, this warrants a lot more discussion. It's not as easy as I thought it might be. So it's like, okay, let's park this for our summer discussions and look to see what we can do in 2026. But it is been discussed, I can assure you guys. But thank you for that feedback, Colette. I can also say you referenced the ITF. They're getting ready to potentially certify 3 companies with the silver certification, that hopefully in the next 45 days or so,
Oh,
they'll have gone through that final step of the process. So yeah, lots of exciting things to
If I
come.
may just interject with one more thing, because Jay put it very well. The social media aspect, and he's on the call with us. I know he's remaining silent, but I know Zach was elevated into a larger role to better accentuate those sorts of things that we had started to plant the seeds of, certainly in years past. But I have the privilege of being on site with Zach for a lot of the different media things we do, and whether it's him, whether it's Jordan, just any of the team on site, I think a lot of people don't see all of the content we attempt to generate over the course of media days. And just like, I know some clips that we still have in the queue that were so good and so fun, and I think more than anything elevated the experience of the players on site. And that's something obviously we don't want to forget in this piece of the conversation. Of course, all of us are focused on engaging fans and ensuring those fans are engaged with the sport in a way that is productive for all of us. But what Zach and your team have done in ensuring the on site experience, the in event experience for these players is as good as it has ever been, like I saw the smiles, I saw the laughter. It wasn't just media day 1, it was media day 2. They were excited to come back because they were curious about what we might have them do next. And so I do really want to congratulate and share my appreciation for Zach, who tolerates more of my nonsense than anyone, and I think did a tremendous job this year steering that ship.
Well, thank you for saying that, Alex. Yes, we are huge fans of Zach and all that he does for us here at the ITA and just his growth and improvement. And again, Zach and I think are cut from the same cloth a little bit. We're just so open to feedback and want to apply those lessons that we learn after each event or each season. So, guys, we've been going a long time, partially because of Alex tardiness, but we probably should wrap it up. But I just want to thank you guys for making time for this today. I'd love to do this this time next year if we could, and maybe we make it an annual tradition. But really appreciate all the time and effort, and hopefully it's not too much of a sacrifice. I know you guys do this just because of your passion for college tennis. I know nobody's getting rich out of any of these endeavors, so I really appreciate what you guys do. Love seeing you at our events, at the NCAA tournaments, etc. So hope to see you plenty more in person in 2025, 2026 season. But have a great summer, and we will be in touch. And if you have any more feedback, please let us know.
I do have one more line, and I'll speak for everyone on this call and all of us at College Tennis Nation. I like to think I have a voice for it at this point. Everyone compliments the job you did in year 1, Dave, and it is a thankless job because everyone's only coming to you with complaints. No one's ever coming to you with compliments or saying, hey, you did this extraordinarily well. And I know every coach I spoke to spoke so glowingly about your willingness to listen. And I think this exercise is another testament to that fact, that you're bringing in 4 people who are just crazily passionate for this beloved sport and asking us to actively criticize you over the course of this podcast. Like, I don't know if there are other CEOs in similar positions who would be willing to do that. And so sincerely, on behalf of all of us, I would round of applause, but I'd end up dropping my phone, and I don't think any of you want to see that. So sincerely, congratulations to you, Dave. If this is where things are after the first 6 months, I cannot wait to see where we are 60 months from now.
Well, thank you, Alex. I'm blushing. That's embarrassing, but I appreciate it.
Well, I did show up late, so I can't have you too mad at me.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again. Have a great summer.